Before we get into it, if you enjoyed these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button, and keep in mind that these are my own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. These are not meant to be, nor should you take them as, investment or trading advice in any way, shape, or form. Do your own due diligence, put in the work for yourself, and make your decisions based on that.
All right, folks, here we are on Wednesday, March 19th. We're going to take a look at ATER today. So ATER had a big day today, was up much higher at one point, ultimately still up almost 28% when all was said and done on the day. But, I mean, intraday, you can see it had a wild time hanging out up here at 350 briefly and pulled back, got caught under this level that we have at 297, 298. Basically, like, the preliminary entry point to 3. So the psychological $3 level. Couldn't hold that and pushed off. But yeah, percentage wise, it was really blasting there for a while. You can see the big gap up here. The gap ups even on the 10-minute. You have there the results from the full 2024 year sort of set this into motion. But I thought we'd come and look and see where some levels are. Last time we looked at ATR, we have looked at it before, but it was way up here. So it obviously shed through all of these levels. At that point, the danger zone was it losing this 912 basically. And boy, did it lose it. And it just, it moved south pretty quickly after that. And yeah, so those are the levels that we had previously. I will get rid of them. I guess we can leave 912 in there just for fun in the meantime. And for now, the levels that I see that are of most important significance, support-wise, it needs to be able to hold this 259 if it wants to be able to continue this motion here. That would be pretty important to me. I could see a case where it could come down to retest this 245 just because it did kind of blow right through it. In an extreme like bullish momentum sort of move, I wouldn't want to see that, but I could see it coming down, testing that 245, and then, making the real move, if you will, not this just really crazy one day like spaceship move. But I guess keep in mind too that there is this gap now, and so if it did fall, it would enter that gap at about 235, and it would fill it at 225. So I wouldn't say catastrophic, but a decent percentage loss there if that were to be the case. Now, if it can continue to climb, like I said, 298, 299, that approach to 3 is all that is. But that $3 level, pretty significant. And then there might be some pretty decent run room. I mean, we saw it run right up and down there pretty swiftly today. Was able to do it all intraday and get to that 363 level. That would be the next one up. So if we see motion, like strong motion to and through that 350, 363 would be the next one I'd be looking for. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather today, and so this that's why I'm like really fumbling my words and levels here. But if we can get through there and we start to look towards some stretch levels, obviously there's a few like topping out levels here, but that's really just sort of like that approach to 4, right? Again, psychological 4. But if we can get past this 363 and strong motion to 4, we do unlock potential for price targets at 427 and 466. Beyond that, we could always take a look. Like I said, we do have that marker up here at 911, 912, whatever. I don't even know if that adjusted correctly because there was this reverse split. So whether that adjusted correctly or not, I honestly don't know. But it's funny to me that it's up there. It looks like it's a level that more or less makes sense. But yeah, this is old wedge level from before it had adjusted for the reverse split. It's funny. But yeah, so those are the levels that I think sort of make the most sense. You can see all these levels to the downside. It does get really drippy. Levels down to and through that gap fill that we talked about. Thinkorswim-wise, this is actually pretty interesting. It has a ton of TTM squeeze triggers and fires that haven't amounted to anything. So, that would tend to lead me to say, yeah, maybe it's just not working for ATER. But, of interest to me today, it's on a lengthy trigger at the moment. Still isn't firing on the TTM squeeze indicator, even with this huge move today. But it did try to throw, well, it did throw a wick out of the channel, right? It tried to move out of the channel, but ultimately it's ended up throwing a wick out of the channel toward the call trigger for March, which is at 387, has a +1 ATR for March, all the way up to 975. So, I don't know if that comes into play. It's just so stretched. These levels are so crazy. The put trigger isn't all the way down until 25 cents. That's when you start the put trigger. So, take that for what you will. But it is interesting to me that it did throw this wick out of the channel, which it's not been able to do. I mean, do we see anything really out of the channel here? Yeah, here, back in September of 2024. A very brief, definitely not as strong of a move. And so, could that be something of more interest, more intrigue, as it's still triggering on the TTM squeeze indicator? Maybe. So maybe this is the time where it does sort of prove out to give it some gusto, if you will. But yeah, maybe we get an outsized move there. Based on that, we'll see. We should check in at least on the EMAs here. It's probably well worth a moment. It did settle right. I preach all the time this gray 183 EMA, my long-term EMA. I think it's super important. And right now we have a bullish crossover on the short-term EMA. The 8 crossed over the 21 and the 34. The 21 has not yet crossed over the 34, so that is yet to be seen. And it tried to push through the 183 today, and it settled almost to the penny on it. The EMA is at 269, and it ended the day at 270. So it's like it moved through it, and then it came back down to retest it. So this is an interesting moment coming into the remainder of the week, really, to prove out, okay, it made one bold move through the 183, and then intraday, because it was such a wild move, it came down to retest the 183, but then it got timed out, right? Basically, it ran up against the clock. And so now that it got timed out, and we have a moment for folks to gather themselves and see what they want to do the rest of the week, is it going to confirm support off the 183? If so, then yeah, maybe some of these levels get put into play. Or does it lose support there? Or does the support at least look precarious at best? We should know that in the next day or two. But if it confirms it and you see a strong move off of it, we've seen double moves fail before at the 183 because it is such a hard level to overcome. So it doesn't mean it couldn't fail, but it at least gives it an opportunity. Here you see a wick through it, right? And even then on this day when it closed, it had already lost it. It tried again the next day and wicked off of it again, and then it really bled down. Yeah, here's a move through it, and it tried again, right? This is what I'm saying, the double move, right? Put in another day, and this was actually ended up to be an inside day here, but it could not continue the motion through it. It's a very tough level to overcome. That's why when it's there, I'm always interested to see what happens. Yeah, back here, you see, this is where it comes to every time, and ultimately it cannot break through there. So is whatever time this is the charm, the 10th or 12th or what, I'm not counting them actually, but this has been here many times before. Is breaking through this at the 270 level an option at this point? Maybe. But like I said, this should sort of show its hand over the next few days. And that's at least helpful for clarity of motion, to have sort of, we don't know yet, but when the next few candles get put in, it should be sort of apparent. All right, folks, so I hope that you had a happy hump day. And as always, I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video.